I knew virtually nothing about the Lai Dai Han until I happened to be invited to a meeting about them about 20 months ago. The first thing I wanted to know was what Lai Dai Han stood for. Easy enough to remember as a phrase. But it's a pejorative, derogatory phrase in Vietnamese about the offspring of mixed race children who are the offspring of so-called comfort women and other women who were forced to have sexual relations, raped by, in this case, by South Vietnamese soldiers, South Korean soldiers during the Vietnamese War. And there's been, far from there being any recognition of their plight or the plight of their offspring, they have been the subject of the most terrible discrimination, with the women concerned being written off as prostitutes and the offspring being written off as mixed race, which in cultures of the Far East, to many people, is close to damnation. And the lie of the Lai Dai Han is, as I say, very derogatory. I'm told close to a swear word, which illustrates what these people have had to put up with at a verbal level, but still more in terms of discrimination. What they now want is, they're not seeking monetary compensation at all. As we will hear, what they're seeking is direct recognition of what happened, because at the moment, I understand the South Korean government is in denial. Recognition of this, acknowledgement of this, and if possible, an apology. But the most important thing for them is the recognition that this took place and they are victims. Thank you very much for coming. When we chose this date, we had no idea that the world was about to end. And the United Kingdom was about to be locked in the biggest constitutional crisis it had since the abolition of the Corn Laws in the 1840s. That's an appropriate cue to introduce my good friend William Hague, Lord Hague of Richmond. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Jack, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I will speak quite briefly because you have many speakers here, but I want to say a few words of support for this campaign and about preventing sexual violence in conflict in general. And I am here really because 6-7 years ago now, with Angelina Jolie, I co-founded the Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative. And that is about all of these issues all over the world, and our central belief that it is only possible to prevent these kinds of atrocities, of mass sexual violence in the course of conflict, if justice is done on those crimes that have already been committed. And therefore, campaigns such as this one are important as part of our global campaign. And what a particular privilege it is to be here with Nadia, the Nobel laureate, because many of us work on these issues, but the two winners, the two holders of the Nobel Peace Prize recently bring something extra to it. You know, we see in these crimes the very worst of the human race. The deliberate, systematic use of rape as a weapon of war is one of the worst aspects of the human race. But in the work of survivors and people who care for survivors, which has been recognized in the Nobel Peace Prize, we see some of the very best of the human race, of people turning their own terrible experiences and knowledge of terrible events to something very positive and generous and unifying for the rest of us. And so I really salute her work and Dr. Mukwege, her fellow holder of the Nobel Peace Prize. And my own experience of raising this issue has been that people support it, but they're often very skeptical about whether you can achieve anything. And we have to show them you really can achieve something. These problems are created by human beings, and they can be resolved by human beings. And justice can be brought about by human beings. And then people think, well, is it really part of foreign policy? You know, Jack and I have both been the foreign secretary of this country. And when I first raised these issues of sexual violence at the G8 foreign ministers, they looked at me as if I was, what is he doing? What is this all about? This is not what we normally discuss. But it is part of a good foreign policy of any nation with a conscience that if people are being driven into being refugees in the millions by sexual violence, stopping that is part of a sensible foreign policy. If sexual violence is being used to prevent reconciliation in the future, to obstruct peace in the future, stopping it is part of a sensible foreign policy. So ministers at the G8, the G20, the UN, everywhere should be discussing these issues. And I'm pleased to say increasingly they are. And then you get the surprise that these issues are being pursued by men. People used to ask me when I was the foreign secretary, but isn't this a women's issue? As if it's in a box somewhere and we don't have to worry about it. Well, the answer to that is 99% of crimes of sexual violence are committed by men. And if we're 99% of the problem, we have to be at least 50% of the solution. And it is up to male leaders in the world, as well as female leaders in the world, to champion these issues and make sure we are successful. So I hope when the United Kingdom hosts a new conference on this issue in the autumn of this year, 5 years after the one that I hosted as Foreign Secretary in 2014, I hope there will be an even greater recognition, building on some limited progress we have made in training armed forces, in persuading judicial systems to act, that much more needs to be done. And I hope there will be success for this campaign and also a greater unity and purpose in the world to deal with sexual violence and conflict in the future. So I encourage everyone here today, and I thank those people who have traveled a long way, including from Vietnam, to be with us and to tell us about their experiences, and I wish every strength to your efforts. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, William. This meeting would not have been possible if Wayne David, Member of Parliament for Caerphilly and Chairman of the all-party group on Vietnam, had not agreed very kindly to sponsor it. Wayne is also a Shadow Minister of Defence for the Labour opposition, but it's in his capacity as Chairman of the all-party group on Vietnam, as a friend of Vietnam, that I now invite him to speak. Wayne.
I just want to say a few words. I'm the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Vietnam, and it's quite an active group here in both houses of Parliament. And one of the things which we've been aware of but have not really delved into is the whole issue of sexual violence and what happened during the Vietnamese War. Many people are not aware of that. In fact, many people are not aware that South Korea actually had over 300,000 soldiers in Vietnam fighting alongside the Americans during the Vietnamese War. And I think one of the first things we have to do, if we're going to really address this issue of sexual violence in that context, is build up the awareness of South Korean involvement in Vietnam and the consequences of that. I think there's work to be done inside Vietnam. There's also work to be done in South Korea as well. And we need to have the recognition of this issue by the South Korean government. So I'm very pleased to be here to support this initiative. It's extremely worthwhile, extremely important, and it must not be a one-off initiative, but part of an ongoing campaign. And I'm determined as chair of the APPG on Vietnam that it shall be precisely that in this House of Commons. I'd also like to thank Jack and William for their involvement, and also the House magazine as well too, because of their commitment and organisation has helped to bring this event about. So thank you very much indeed for coming, and like Jack and William, I assure you, you have my full support for the campaign that must be mounted. Thank you.
One of the direct victims of these rapes by South Korean soldiers was Tran Thi Nai. She is now elderly, as you will see, but she's present with us today. Has travelled all the way from Vietnam to be with us today, and she's joined by her son, Tran Van Thi, who has been for a long time has been a kind of lone campaigner for justice for the Lai Dai Han, of which he is one. There were originally thousands and thousands of direct victims like Tran Thi Nai. Now I'm told that it's at the most 800, because this happened a long time ago. But as we've heard from William, the fact it's a long time ago doesn't mean you can forget about it. It makes it all the more important that we face up to these wrongs that were committed, certainly in the lifetime of many of us. You won't be able to move forward until we've dealt with this part of the past. But Tran Thi Nai and her son, Tran Van Thi, are going to talk to us now through an interpreter. And they're going to be joined on the stage by Rebecca Hawkins, who's the sculptor, who's going to talk about, after they've spoken, about the commemorative statue that she is producing to commemorate what happened, but also, of course, and above all, to draw attention to it. So I'll now invite them, where they would, to come to the platform. Please.
Kính thưa các vị đại biểu của Vương quốc Anh, hôm nay tôi đến đây, tôi được gặp cấp cao Vương quốc Anh.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm very grateful to be here, seeing noble men and women from United Kingdom, a very far country.
Giúp đỡ cho tôi bớt những cái nỗi khổ từ xưa giờ đến giờ cũng vẫn là mang trong lòng. Tôi là người con gái lớn lên, mới có 24 tuổi, nhưng bị linh hồn hiếp dâm tôi.
You are from very far country who didn't have any direct relation or concern to the matter, but you are willing to help me to review what happened to me and looking for the justice to me. I was a 24 years old girl who had been raped by South Korean soldiers during the Vietnam Wartime.
Trong khi ba mẹ tôi không có nhà đi ra đồng, tôi ở nhà, mẹ tôi và các bán những cái đồ ăn, sú, xì dầu. Ông Hàn Quốc này, ông đến ông mua, tôi cũng không biết. Tôi đừng.
I will never forget the moment long time ago when I was staying at home when my parents was working in the field, and that soldier, that the South Korean officer went to my home, pretend to buy something. However, accidentally, she went in, dragged me inside the house and raped me.
Khi tôi chạy lại, nói đồ chập cái tay tôi nắm kéo vào trong giường liền.
I tried to resist, but he just take my hand and drag me inside the room, close the door, and rape me again.
Trong khi thấy mình ổng lựu đạn với súng rồi nhiều lắm, tôi còn quá sợ hãi.
He grabbed me when in full battle gear uniform with grenade and gun in his body. He's so terrifying, and he's so terrific, and I'm terrified of him.
Thì xong công việc ông đi, thì tôi ở nhà quá là buồn. Ba mẹ giờ mình đâu có biết gì. Chừng sau này
After the rape, he just left me there, leave me there with sadness, and I didn't know what to do.
4-5 tháng sau thì bụng tôi mỗi ngày thì mỗi lớn. Tôi thì làm nghề y tá, tôi không thể phá đứa con trong bụng tôi được.
For 5 months after it, I see that there are photos growing up inside my body, and I was a midwife in the village. I could not abandon the baby inside my womb.
Tôi cũng cố gắng chịu đến ngày tôi sinh nở được. Rồi cha mẹ thì mắng chửi trong làng, bạn bè chê cười.
I tried to keep my mouth shut and continue to stay in the village until I gave birth to the Lai Dai children, which is a daughter. And at that time, I suffered constantly from the cursing of the local people and even from my own parents.
Sau khi đấy thì tôi quá khổ. Thì cha mẹ chứ bớ chẳng để nào tôi ẵm con, tôi đi đâu còn vẫn ở trong nhà.
And then my parents keep pressuring me, saying that I'm a curse to the family, and I couldn't go anywhere. I just stay indoor and lock the door.
Thời gian đó ông đi đâu mất. 4-5 tháng sau ông quay trở lại.
During that time, that soldier, the South Korean officer, never come back, never sent a word. However, 4-5 months after it, he went back.
Ông quay lại bằng đêm, ông kêu cửa, thì tôi chạy ra, tôi mở cửa, thấy ông mặc đồ đồng phục, lựu đạn, súng đó ông mang. Ông nhìn nhìn vơ, trong 2 phút, ông đi.
He went back in the full battle gear uniform with gun and grenade and dagger. And he come in midnight at my terrifying. He knocked on the door and looked and stared at me, and then he go away.
Sau đó, bắt đầu 2 ngày sau, ông kêu người bạn ông đến tại nhà tôi. Ông nói cái ông này giờ ở trong đèo Vĩnh Ít Ninh Hòa, chớ tôi vào trong đó nói chuyện với ông.
And then 2 days after that, he asked another South Korean officer to come to my house and take me and my children and my child to Ninh Hòa town to see him.
Khi vô trong đó rồi thì tôi cũng đâu có biết sự việc này xảy ra nữa. Ông ấy cũng tiếp tục, ông cũng bắt tôi đi theo con đường của ông đó.
When I went to the soldier barrack in Ninh Hòa, then he put me in a room and he continued to rape me there.
Xong rồi qua trong ngày đó, ngày thứ 2 tôi quay về nhà. Với lý do cha mẹ tôi sợ ông này ông hung lắm, người lính CIC ở tại đây giết người Việt Nam nhiều lắm. Cha mẹ tôi còn sợ, tương đâu vô cái ông này, ông quýnh tôi chết rồi.
And she raped me for the whole day, and next day I begged him to let me go home, and he let me go home. When I come back home, then my parents were so happy because he thought that I will die there and he will try to kill me to keep my mouth shut. My parents said that the South Korean soldiers, they are so brutal, they ferocious, they kill a lot of people, and you surviving to come back is really a miracle.
Rồi như vậy thì thời gian ông đi đâu không biết đường nữa. Rồi không biết lý do nào ông cũng tìm lại được một lần. Thứ 2 nữa tôi không biết, lần thứ 2, thứ 3 gì đấy. Ông đi rồi ông lại rồi ông đi luôn tới bây giờ luôn.
He went and he didn't come back to me. If I remember correctly, then he come back another time to rape me again, and from that time, possibly he fed up with me and he never come back up to now.
Thì lúc đó gia đình tôi còn quá khổ cực, là làm, là ăn, lên nuôi mấy đứa con tôi. Thì ở nhà quê, tôi có một cái nhà ở nhà quê. Thì dân làng họ chớ nhiễu, không chồng mà có con.
And I have to live my life and taking care of my children there. And upon the curse from the local villager who said to me that you are having the children with the enemy.
Tất cả đồ đạc xe của tôi có xe tải chở hàng xây dựng, xây các nhà cửa, đem lên trong nhà. Thì họ tới công an, tới đóng cửa, xô cha tôi xuống xe, quánh cha tôi chết. Hai ông khiêng, hai ông một hai tay trước, hai chân sau, đưa cha tôi quăng vô cốp, nhốt.
After the United of Vietnam, the winning regime come over, and the local policeman and guerrilla told me and told my family that you having children with the enemy, so you are part of enemy, and because of that, then they confiscate all the property, including the vehicles that the family had, and they had beaten every member of family, especially for my dad who dared to raise a voice against them. They beat my parent, my father to death.
Khi nhốt cha tôi trong tù mà cứ 1 giờ phía đưa cha tôi ra tra, quánh cha tôi rên rất mét. Tôi cũng nằm cớ bên mẹ, luôn cả nhà nhốt hết, nằm cớ.
They arrested the whole family apart from the children. So me and my dad and the uncle, everyone have been put in jail. And at midnight, I can hear the voice of my father when they torture him.
Nói là lên án con lấy người Hàn Quốc, Đại Hàn, người CIC giết dân Việt Nam nhiều lắm.
I can hear that they interrogated my father. They asked why you let your daughter to get sexual intercourse with the South Korean soldier. Are you collaborating with the enemy?
Khi thả ra tù, mẹ tôi giờ trước, em rớ tôi giờ sau, tôi giờ sau, cha tôi sau nữa.
And later on, they released me. No, they released my mother first, and then my uncle, and then me, and finally they released my father.
Giờ tại nhà trong khoảng 7 ngày, cha tôi không còn gì, tim gan thận gì bị vỡ, chết.
But they beaten my father up to the level that only 7 days after having been released from prison, he died at home.
Rồi giờ này, con tôi lớn, đi học tới trường, thì bạn bè xúm quánh, nhất là quánh thằng con trai tôi nhiều nhất.
When my children went to the local school, then from teacher to the peer in the class, they all cursed them and they beat them, especially for my boy, the one standing in front of them.
Mày là con Hàn Quốc, học làm gì? Ai cho mày làm gì? Mày học.
Even teacher told my son that you are the son of a South Korean soldier who come to this land to kill the people. Why you come to school? You come here for no good.
Mà cái bọn trong trường, lớp học của nó là người ngoài không biết. Theo dõi thằng con tôi đi đâu là chụp quánh, chừng sau này tôi không biết. Chụp ra vì đường tàu lửa như giờ ấy. 60 đứa mà chụp quánh một thằng con trai tôi.
My son have been beaten regularly inside and outside the school. I still remember sometime when he in the field, he was in the field, and up to 7 or 8 other boys and surrounded him and beaten him.
Thằng con trai tôi sợ hãi. Từ đó nó bắt băng thắng ở Sài Gòn. Cuộc sống của nó rất là vất vả. Hiện giờ nó đứng đây.
Nói thêm là thăm ngắn câu chuyện.
Yeah. Còn hai con gái tôi vẫn ở nhà với tôi, rất là tội nghiệp.
And my daughter, who are the sister of him, even have to not go to school and just stay at home.
Yeah. Thưa,
Mong muốn
giờ tôi mong muốn chính phủ của Vương quốc Anh, những người đã cao cấp. Hôm nay tôi gặp ủng hộ giùm đỡ cho bọn tôi ra ánh sáng giữa những cái nhục. Chúng tôi cũng là con gái, chịu khổ.
What is bad, what is worse for me is the South Korean government and the Vietnamese government didn't recognize the matter. The South Korean government even say that they didn't believe that either any mixed race or half-blood South Korean children was in Vietnam. And so today I'm so happy to have you, the friend from England, who want to shed the light into the matter here. I hope very much that after hearing from me, you will continue to support us to bring this one to light, at least give us some dignity. Ông muốn cảm ơn bà rất là tốt.
Tôi xin cảm ơn Vương quốc Anh và những vị nghệ sĩ và những người bạn cùng có mặt trong buổi chiều hôm nay. Một lời cảm ơn chân tình đến.
I want to bow my head here to show my sincere thanks to the United Kingdom and the English friend, the British friend here. I don't know what rank you are, but you really willing to help us. For us, I thank you.
Tôi rất mong sự việc của chúng tôi được quý Ngài hỗ trợ và đưa công việc này ra trên toàn cầu để cùng lên tiếng, giúp cho chúng tôi lấy lại danh dự, lấy lại để chúng tôi biết được tổ tiên của chúng tôi nằm ở đâu, nguồn gốc của chúng tôi ở đâu.
Without your help, I will not be able to bring this matter to light, and I hope you will continue to help me to bring to light and to help us to get what we wanted, which is to know that if we are really from South Korean.
Mẹ tôi là một người phụ nữ bị 2 người lính đại Hàn dân quốc hãm hiếp.
My mother is a young girl at the wartime who have been raped repeatedly by 2 different South Korean army officers.
Để rồi ngày Việt Nam thống nhất đất nước thì chúng tôi phải gánh những trận đòn giống như là rác thải của chiến tranh.
And after the war, when the country united, there are no South Korean soldier in Vietnam anymore, but us, the one we consider have some relation to the South Korean soldier. So the new regime consider us, consider my mother, a kind of enemy, and consider me as the remnant of rubbish of the war.
Chính phủ đại Hàn dân quốc nhờ vào chiến tranh đệ nhất đệ nhị Việt Nam Cộng Hòa, đó nền kinh tế của đại Hàn dân quốc được phát triển.
The South Korean government couldn't go away from the fact that they went into a powerful economy and it is starting from the support of the South Vietnamese regime at that time.
Từ năm 1989 cho đến nay, họ đến Việt Nam, họ đi lùng vào từng gia đình có con lai để họ lấy những cái địa chỉ, những cái tấm hình tồn lại, họ hủy bỏ.
However, the way they reacted to our request is very disgraceful. In 1989, they sent some officer in a fact-finding mission to Vietnam. And those officers went into every single family with the Lai Dai Han children. They're asking for picture, for note, for everything that can be considered evidence. And they took them, said, for further consideration.
Họ không bao giờ họ thừa nhận chúng tôi là những người con của lính đại Hàn dân quốc tạo ra.
However, they just brought the evidence away and they never go into recognition of the matter. And that thing happened not for 1 year, 2 years, or 10 years, but 30 years. At the time being, the South Korean government says that there are no migrant children of the, that come from the South Korean soldier in Vietnam.
Tôi đã gửi quá nhiều thư từ, tôi đã gửi quá nhiều công văn đi đến các đại sứ lãnh sự và 6 đời tổng thống, và tôi đã đến cả cái hội cựu chiến binh của Đại Hàn Dân Quốc từng tham chiến tại Việt Nam. Họ không thừa nhận chúng tôi, họ không thừa nhận lính họ có con Lai Đại Hàn tại Việt Nam. Bây giờ chúng tôi chỉ cần điều đầu tiên.
I sent the letter to 7 generations of the South Korea president. I went to the ambassador of the South Korea in Vietnam, and I went to the community of the South Korea in Vietnam, as well as different ministry in South Korea. However, all of my effort go to no avail, and there no response at home. Now, what we want is simply is.
Chúng tôi là những người thấp bé, chúng tôi nhờ vào Vương quốc Anh, những người sĩ và những truyền thông tin này để giúp chúng tôi trên toàn cầu và dạy chính phủ Đại Hàn Dân Quốc phải thừa nhận chúng tôi là con Lai Đại Hàn, là những giọt máu rơi của họ trên chiến trường miền Nam Việt Nam.
Right. The first thing we want is very simple thing is the South Korean government should accept the fact that there are some children who has been the result of the sexual intercourse or rape or whatever reason of the former South Korean soldier in Vietnam. It means we are existing, we are not non-existent as they claim.
Trước mặt quý vị, những nghị sĩ chưa bao giờ biết tôi là ai và họ chưa bao giờ được liên lạc với tôi, nhưng họ sẵn sàng giúp chúng tôi lên tiếng. Chúng tôi chỉ cần một điều duy nhất cuối cùng của cuộc đời chúng tôi là phải thừa nhận chúng tôi. Có phải thừa nhận chúng tôi.
If they try not recognize their own race, if they try to cover up what is a terrible fact, then what is the core value of their own nation? And today here, with the support from you, the noble men who willing to help us to shed the light into the matter, I hope very much that finally there would be the pressure that's strong enough for the South Korean government to accept a simple fact.
Chúng tôi xin chân thành cảm ơn.
Thank you very much.
It's now my great pleasure to ask Lord Ahmed of Wimbledon, who's the Minister of State, to speak. And then that will be followed by Nadia, Murad, and then we'll hear from Rebecca. Lord Ahmed, thank you.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my immense pleasure to join you here. As Jack said in his introduction, I'm here as Minister of State at the Foreign Office, but I'm also proud to be carrying forward the legacy which began with my good friend and colleague in the House of Lords, William Hague, Lord Hague, who was the Prime Minister's Special Representative on preventing sexual violence in conflict. It is perhaps notable and reflective that at times when challenges of government and priorities change, that I'm proud to be serving in that capacity also as the Prime Minister's Special Representative on preventing sexual violence in conflict. But in doing so, after hearing the testimony that we've just heard, it makes me not only proud in paying tribute to those courageous survivors who become the strongest advocates of this most important of priorities, but it is also greatly humbling to be in the presence of people who not only demonstrate to themselves, to their families, to their communities, to their countries, but to the rest of us in public life about the importance of never forgetting the challenge that confronts us. If I may reflect very momentarily on personal experiences, I am a son of parents who were caught up in divisions of the Indian subcontinent, who had to overnight leave their homes, who lost family members, who did not know the fate of women, sisters, aunts, and uncles, who fell towards the hatred which was demonstrated between two communities who previously had lived side by side, as friends, indeed, as families. And it's tragic that as we look at the world today in 2019, that the conflicts that we talk of the past are not just mere reminders, but it is tragic that we still face conflicts of the present. I pay tribute to you for being here today who are the survivors of such conflicts, because it is important that we, from your testimonies, learn, we hear, but most importantly, as William said together with Angelina Jolie when they launched this initiative, that it is time to also act. Last year, and I'm delighted that we're joined also by Nadia Murad, on behalf of not just the Yazidi community, but of victims and survivors worldwide, survivors of genocide. And it was right that Nadia, together with Denis Mukwege, were rightly recognized by the Nobel Committee. In her honor, and I was delighted to meet with Nadia and her team earlier at the Foreign Office, the United Kingdom will be launching the Murad Code, under which signatories across the world will commit to upholding international judicial standards and best practice when gathering evidence from survivors of sexual violence. I will be working with colleagues across the piece, and again, at a time perhaps when we meet in Westminster when there are divisions. This again is an issue that unites us across parties, across both houses, and I pay tribute to colleagues from both houses, from both parties, who have joined the events and this event today. And we hope that through the launch of the Murad Code, we'll be working with international agencies, international organizations, countries, and NGOs, that we will be able to address the disparity between the tens and thousands of rape victims and their perpetrators are ultimately brought to justice for what and the crimes they have committed. This underlines the UK's latest element of our international campaign to prevent and respond to sexual violence in conflict. I know Baroness Hellich, my colleague from the House of Lords, was here earlier. I pay tribute to her work, particularly in the area of what happened right here in Europe a couple of decades ago in the Western Balkans, and for the accountability that we are now seeing beginning to be delivered for victims of sexual violence. And as guest editor of Radius 4, today's program said last month, Angelina Jolie, and I pay tribute to her work in this respect, and I quote, "The British people should be proud of the UK government's leadership on preventing sexual violence in conflict." As a minister, I would agree with her, but we should not rest on our laurels. As we've just heard from the testimony, this isn't just about what we confront today. The wounds are deep, and it is important we commit ourselves internationally. And in this regard, we have committed over £46 million to the campaign. We have raised awareness and built an international consensus on the issue. Importantly, trained thousands of police and military personnel about the importance of sexual and gender-based violence, and helped to develop new guidelines on gathering evidence and building the capacity of governments, judiciaries, civil society organizations to tackle the important issue of sexual violence. Most recently, in November last year, we launched a film festival, which was attended by young filmmakers from many conflicts from around the world, who through film are depicting those testimonies that we've heard today in person. And we harness the power of film to help fight the discrimination of the survivors of sexual violence and conflict that they so often face. And as we heard again today, it is not just about bringing to attention and bringing to account the perpetrators. It is the stigma which is attached to the victims at a time when many victims need the greatest help. Their own communities, their own faiths, their own families turn their back at a time when they need their greatest level of support. And therefore, I'm pleased that we are working across the piece with international faith communities, faith leaders of all beliefs and those of none, to ensure that we have international consensus through a declaration that all faiths, all beliefs reject the issue of any stigma attached to the victims, the brave survivors of sexual violence, and yes, to the children born of such actions. We will continue, and I give the commitment of our Prime Minister, of our government, and I believe I speak for all parliamentarians of whatever party who are present here today, that we will continue in pursuit of those noble objectives which we first set ourselves in 2014. We have a busy year ahead of us. In the run-up to the event in November, we'll be hosting a conference in Wilton Park where our focus will be on how best to secure justice for survivors and hold perpetrators to account. And in this respect, I pay tribute to the House magazine, who, as many of you would have seen, have brought particular focus on the issue of preventing sexual violence in conflict right here in the edition that they've launched this month. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much to say on this subject. I cannot do justice in the way that, as we've just heard from one survivor, and we'll hear from another. But what I can do is underline our government's commitment, the United Kingdom as a country of our commitment to what has been achieved so far, but we will continue to focus on this priority. I pay tribute to Lord Hague, to Baroness Hellich, my predecessor in this role, Baroness Ainley, and others for what they have done to bring the issue of sexual violence to the forefront. But most of all, and I'm sure I speak for each and every one in this room and beyond, our thanks go to the courageous survivors. Our thanks go to you, every single survivor who is here today, for not just your incredible courage in surviving the worst kind of acts against an individual, but for your courage, your selflessness, and dignity, and incredible example to all of us as you become the strongest of advocates on this most important of issues. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much more to do. Our government, I as the Prime Minister's Special Representative, pledge to you here today our continuing commitment. We will continue to work tirelessly to ensure we prevent sexual violence in conflict. We prevent the stigma which is attached to the victims. And ultimately, what the victims, the survivors want, is to ensure we work collectively and collaboratively, domestically, internationally, and leave no stone unturned to bring perpetrators to justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Ahmed. Our penultimate speaker is Nadia Murad, who, as we've heard, is a Yazidi, a distinguished ancient minority community in northern Iraq where they'd lived or tried to live in peace, who were the subject of vicious, unprovoked attack by Daesh, by ISIL. Many killed, many sought to flee, some who sought to flee, many who sought to flee, like Nadia, were raped as they tried to escape this hellhole and then held in a prison as slaves. It is a remarkable testament to the human spirit that after enduring that kind of experience, Nadia Murad should have been able to rise above it, to now be one of the world's leading campaigners for sexual justice and an end to this kind of sexual oppression. And so great has been her work in the short time that she's been able to be active, that, as we know, she was made a Nobel laureate in 2017. It's an enormous pleasure and honor for me to ask Nadia to come to the platform. Thank you very much.
مساء الخير جميعا. يشرفني أن أشارك معكم اليوم في هذه الفعالية المهمة وأن نتحدث عن أحد أهم المشاكل التي تعاني منها النساء في مختلف مناطق العالم، والتي كنت أنا مع الآلاف من الفتيات الإيزيديات ضحية لها.
Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be here with you today at this important event and to talk about one of the most important problems facing women around the world, with which I, along with thousands of Yazidi girls, were victims of it.
القصة المؤلمة التي استمعنا إليها قبل قليل من هذه السيدة وابنها من فيتنام هي أحد القصص التي يجب أن تسمع.
The painful story we heard a little while ago from Lady Dai and her son is one of the stories that should be heard.
في ظل هذا التطور الكبير على مختلف الأصعدة في عالمنا، إلى أننا لم نستطع أن نضع حداً لحماية النساء والأطفال من الاعتداءات الجنسية التي أصبحت السمة التي استغلتها الكثير من الجماعات الإرهابية والمتطرفة حول العالم.
In light of the big developments in all fields around our world, yet we have not been able to protect women and children from sexual violence, which has become a feature committed by many terrorist and extremist groups around the world.
حيث أنها أصبحت مصدر اقتصادي قوي ينتفع منه المجاميع الإرهابية مثل داعش لتمويل عملياته العسكرية والإجرامية.
As this problem has become a strong economic source through which terrorist groups such as Daesh or ISIL finance their military and criminal acts.
إنهم يبيعون الفتاة الواحدة بآلاف الدولارات بعد الاعتداء عليها، وأحيانا الفتاة الواحدة يتم بيعها عشرات المرات.
They sell the girl after they assaulted her for thousands of dollars, and sometimes one girl is sold dozens of times.
وطالما أنه لا يوجد محاسبة لهؤلاء المجرمين، فإن هذه الظاهرة سوف تزداد باعتبارها أصبحت نوعاً من التجارة التي تغذي الجماعات المتطرفة بالمال والمتعة.
As long as there is no accountability for criminals, this phenomenon will increase as it becomes a kind of trade that feeds extremist groups with money and pleasure.
أنا مع أكثر من 6500 من النساء الإيزيديات من بلدة سنجار أصبحنا ضحايا لهذه الظاهرة بعد أن أقدم تنظيم داعش على غزو منطقتنا وقام بخطفنا وسبينا والاعتداء علينا نحن الأقليات، نحن الفتيات والنساء في عام 2014.
I myself, with more than 6,500 Yazidi girls and women from the town of Sinjar, became victims of this phenomenon after Daesh invaded our region in 2014 and kidnapped and assaulted us.
الإيزيديون نجحوا في استعادة البعض من مختطفاتهم، لكن إلى يومنا هذا لا يزال مسير أكثر من 3500 من النساء والأطفال الإيزيديين مجهولا في قبضة داعش.
The Yazidis have succeeded in retrieving some of their abductees, but to this day, the fate of more than 3,500 Yazidis and children is still unknown in Daesh's captivity.
ومن أكثر من 4 سنوات يتم بيعهم وشرائهم والاعتداء عليهم جنسيا دون أن تكون هناك جهود لإنقاذهم.
For more than 4 years now, they have been sold, bought, and sexually assaulted without any efforts to save them.
بعد أن تمكنت من الفرار من تنظيم داعش، قررت أن لا أسكت، وقررت أن أكون صوتاً لأولئك النساء اللواتي يتعرضن للعنف الجنسي كل يوم.
After I managed to escape from Daesh, I decided to speak up and be a voice for those women who are being subjected to sexual violence every day.
تجولت في الكثير من البلدان وشاركت في الكثير من الفعاليات والمؤتمرات. التقيت بأغلب القادة الذين في يدهم صناعة القرار العالمي، ودائما كنت أحمل معي وجعي ودموعي وألمي.
I traveled to many countries and participated in many events and conferences. I met many leaders and world decision makers, and I always carry with me my tears and pain.
كنت ولا زلت أحمل معي صرخات أولئك النساء البريات اللواتي تعرضن لجرائم لا يمكن وصفها.
I was and still carrying with me the screams of those innocent women who were subjected to unspeakable crimes.
رغم العمل الكبير الذي أنهكني طيلة السنوات الماضية، إلا أنني اليوم أشعر بإحباط شديد، لأنني ولحتى يومنا هذا لم أجد إرهابيا قد تم جلبه إلى العدالة، ولم يتم محاكمة أحد منهم على أفعالهم القذرة.
Despite the hard work that I have been doing for the past few years, today I am very disappointed, as until this day I did not see any single terrorist brought to justice. None has been tried for their horrible crimes.
وإلى يومنا هذا هم مستمرين في ارتكاب جرائم العنف الجنسي ضد النساء والأطفال، وفي بعض الأحيان الأطفال.
To this day, they continue to commit crimes of sexual violence against women, girls, and in some cases children.
المجتمع الدولي أدان جرائم العنف الجنسي التي ارتكبها داعش والمجاميع المتطرفة الأخرى، لكنه لم ينجح في جلب مرتكبيها إلى العدالة.
The international community condemned the crimes of sexual violence committed by Daesh and other extremist groups, but failed to bring the perpetrators to justice.
حيث أن هؤلاء المجرمين يتمتعون بالحقوق والحرية والحياة أكثر من الضحايا نفسهم، فكيف يمكن أن نعيد الكرامة لضحايا إذا كان الجميع يغض النظر عن ملاحقة مرتكبي الجرائم ويعمل مبدأ الإفلات من العقاب؟
As these criminals enjoy more rights, freedom and life than the victims themselves, then how can we restore dignity to the victims if everyone turns a blind eye to the persecution of perpetrators and allow them to enjoy impunity?
قبل فترة فزت بجائزة نوبل للسلام، وخلال تسليم الجائزة قلت أنه لا يوجد جائزة في العالم يمكن أن تعيد لنا كرامتنا سوى تحقيق العدالة.
Not long ago, I won the Nobel Peace Prize, and during the award ceremony, I said there was no prize in the world that could restore our dignity, but justice does.
كما أنني ألفيت كتاباً عن قصتي في قبضة داعش وأسميتها الفتاة الأخيرة.
I also wrote a book about my story under Daesh's captivity titled The Last Girl.
لذلك أدعو المجتمع الدولي أن يقف أمام مسؤوليته وأن يعمل على حماية النساء من العنف الجنسي في مناطق الصراع لكي أكون فعلاً آخر فتاة يتم الاعتداء عليها. وشكراً لكم.
Therefore, I call upon the international community to hold its responsibilities and to protect women from sexual violence in conflict zones in order to be the last girl to be sexually assaulted. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nadia, for that. Shukran. And as Nadia said, that no prize in the world which can compensate for what happened, but justice can. And it's what all these victims are seeking is not monetary compensation, not prizes, but a recognition that wrongs, profound wrongs have been committed. And that requires, first of all, that the government's concerned, in this case, in our case, the government of South Korea, acknowledges what happened, ceases to be in denial, and then shows respect and accords dignity to the victims and their offspring, and if they feel able, to apologize for that. We had to go through this in this country, for example, with Bloody Sunday. I remember when Bloody Sunday took place, I remember how the state basically closed up to ensure that the truth never came out. A very senior judge was appointed, and his report was a complete whitewash, an inversion of the truth. It was years, more than almost 30 years later, before the truth came out. But bringing it out has enabled the apology which David Cameron issued in June of 2010 in the House of Commons, has enabled the families concerned, the bereaved victims, and those who were injured and still surviving, to bring a closure to what happened. And that is what we are seeking with the Lai Dai campaign. The very last speaker is Rebecca Hawkins, who's a very distinguished sculptress, who's just going to talk very briefly about what she is doing to memorialize what happened to the Lai Dai Han. Rebecca.
Thank you. I would like to thank Justice for Lai Dai Han for entrusting me with this important commission and everyone here this evening. Over on the table over here is a maquette for the 2-meter bronze sculpture that I'm in the process of making. My brief was to encapsulate the plight of the Lai Dai Han with a sculpture. And I listened to their testimonials, and I heard their pain, anger, disbelief, and despair at what life had thrown at them. And I thought, how on earth can I talk for these women and their children if I haven't walked in their shoes? The women and children whose lives I've been asked to represent have all survived through immense strength in the face of adversity. So this sculpture is inspired by them. And for this reason, it's in a positive form, leaning forwards and upwards, as after all these years, they are still standing here, shaking their fists, asking to be recognized. The mother is looking up to the sky for answers that are not there, while bound to a child who shelters underneath her, away from the stigma. One hand bound behind its back to illustrate the social and educational constraints placed upon them and the generations to follow. I was struck by how trapped these mothers and their children have felt and been. So I have depicted them as two trees from different root structures entwined together through love, sufferance, and shared strength, because their problems are rooted in the past and they are unable to move forward. Trees are also a way of referring to historical events as their lifespan transcends human age. What I found so moving about the whole story is that the bonds between these mothers and children of the Lai Dai Han were tested from the moment of conception. There is a powerful juxtaposition between a child's need for nurture and the unconditional love of a mother who has survived extreme violence to create it. This led me to link the two arms and cradle the child's head in its mother's protective hand. When I became a mother for the first time, it was because I chose to have a baby. And despite being in a loving relationship, it was the most lonely and frightening thing I've ever done. Because of something that happened to them and that was done to them, over which they had no choice, these women have been smeared with a stigma which will stay with them until their grave. This felt an important point to concentrate on. I chose the strangler fig, which is common in Vietnam and is a parasitic vine, and the seed is dropped into the canopy of a host tree, usually by a bird, and the roots grow downwards, ensnaring the trunk and sending roots all the way down to the tree's roots, which then send up tendrils around the tree, strangling it, so that it dies. This metaphor fits the stories of these mothers and children, and of all who are survivors of sexual violence in conflict. This sculpture pays homage to the strength of these families who have survived this. I hope that it stands and speaks for all who have found themselves in this position, and that it leads people who see it to feel compassion, ask questions, and seek ways of putting an end to sexual violence as a weapon of war forever. Thank you.
This brings us to the conclusion of the formal part of this event. I'd like to thank all of you, and some of you have had to leave already, for coming to this meeting, because the only way to get a campaign like this going is by mobilizing people. I was asked earlier today by a journalist, well, what will you achieve? And the answer is, we're not sure what we will achieve, except I'm absolutely certain that we won't achieve anything unless we come together and run this campaign. And on this day of all, 16th of January 2019, one of the most extraordinary days in British political history for 150 years, to get this audience of parliamentarians and their staff here today, and to stay, illustrates the concern that everybody here in this country has about this issue. So many thanks to all of you. Thanks to the previous speakers. Above all, thank you to you, Nadia, and to Tran Van T and to Tran T Nai for, where are they? Oh, here. For making long journeys to come here and what we hope from all of this is that at long last, for your son and above all for you, we are able to achieve justice. Thank you all very much indeed.